This is Dale Christie, Mayor Pro Tem. This was the City Council meeting of January 27th, 2020. Number of items on the agenda tonight. On the consent agenda, there was a lot of normal business type items, including accepting grants and taking care of workers' comp paperwork and so forth. But there were a couple of other issues. One is that we established a date to conduct a public hearing on the final draft of the comprehensive plan, the updated comprehensive plan. That went live today. It's available on the city website. It will go before the Planning Commission on February 6th and will come to the City Council on the second meeting of February. I believe that's February 24th. In addition, we approved an on-sale liquor license for Rapids Brewing Company. There was no work session tonight. In the regular agenda, a number of items. We heard from Fire Chief Travis Cole. Heard that there are 199 calls for service this year, which is the most over the past number of years, including 24 structure fires, which is 16 more than last year. And they always have a nice report that they give us, including we're over 2,000 hours of firefighter training this past year in 2019. Much of that was provided through grants from various agencies. Over 700 children took a tour of the fire hall this year. The fire department purchased 6 new thermal cameras that are very valuable in various situations during 2019. They also conducted live burn trainings with houses that were donated to the city. And as we've heard earlier this year, one of their major projects is to work on the replacement of Fire Truck 115. That will happen in September of this year. And the City Council has worked on a depreciation format, so that is a planned item, and we have planned out 20 plus years into the future as to when various needs will come up. Also found it interesting that the hazmat group, the Grand Rapids Fire Department hazmat group, responded to an additional 3 out of jurisdiction calls this past year, so we thank them for that as well. And finally, there were a number of upgrades to the fire hall, much needed upgrades that were mentioned in his report. Found it also interesting that the Grand Rapids Fire Department covers 247 square miles of service. And we certainly thank our firefighters for what they do and the time spent away from their family. Under Engineering Public Works, we entered into an agreement with Zeph Energy to provide an electric vehicle charging hub. Also interesting that the state of Minnesota has a certain amount of money that became available to them because of the Volkswagen lawsuit that took place a number of years ago. Much of that has to go to electric cars and pushing the movement towards those. And so we already do have 2 electric charging stations in our city, but we will now have 3 more, and those will be located on the public property, located probably could best be described as between the Big Red Chair on the corner of Highway 2 and 169 and the Brood Awakenings building nearby. There'll be 3 stalls. If I remember right, one of those was for, anyway, there's 3, I believe. Some of those were for quick charges, and some of those are for longer charges. The quick chargers cost more, and owners of electric cars have a card that allows them access to that and functions somewhat as a credit card. I think could best be explained in that way. We also considered a resolution and approved it, authorizing the Grand Rapids HRA to prepare documents related to the merger and transfer of assets to the Itasca County HRA. So over the past year, we've had a committee with both members from our HRA and the counties to talk about merging. And we feel that, I think it's clear at this point that the council feels that there can be some streamlining of those 2 agencies by merging them into one. Both can save money, and it also can make a better end-use product for the user of that, where there's one-stop shopping and so forth. So, of course, there's a lot of the city HRA owns a lot of property that has value, and so assessments need to be done, or you know, what we're doing here is turning it over to the lawyers and the accountants to figure out what the value of what we're turning over is, and we're also trying to make sure that we have representation on this new HRA. So that will probably take another year or so, but the process is moving to make that streamlined possible. And then finally tonight we had a public hearing, and that public hearing was to consider the rezoning of 7.3 acres of land from public use to R4, which means multi-family residential, high density. This can best be described, for many in the community, you might know this as the old Riverview property. Had been sold to the city or transferred to the city a while back, and the HRA, along with other organizations, received state money for the construction of a multifamily residential project in that area. And so that had gone before the Planning Commission, and tonight we heard from both the developers and area residents who had questions about the project. And the council moved to move this forward. The project will have 56 units. We recently heard from the housing study that we are going to be short at least 400 units or more over the next 5 years. So this will help make a dent in that, especially in a type of housing that's desperately needed. There are two types of housing in there. One is there are 14 subsidized units. Those subsidized units will not be going out to new applicants. They actually will be transferred from a present site that will needs to find, we need to find a place for them to move. So those 14 units will be transferred from other sites within the city. And then there are 42 workforce housing units. So those go up to 80% of, I've got notes here somewhere, but I believe up to 80% of the median poverty line. And we know that half of our Grand Rapids residents fall under 70%. So we know that over half of our residents would qualify for these housing, or this housing. For a two-person, the requirement is a little over $46,000 of income or less. For 3 people, $52,000, and for 4 people, just under $58,000. So those are actually very good salaries, and take in a good share of the residents of Grand Rapids would qualify for those. So we're excited for the project. We believe that we can meet the neighbors' concerns, and this project, as far as we know, should start this summer, and will help with housing needs. And with that, we adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting is February 10th, I believe, of 2020. Thank you.